This is Cory Riojas, and you're listening to the Matt Balaker podcast.
Thank you once again for tuning in to the Matt Balaker podcast. It makes me feel warm and fuzzy. And please click subscribe. You don't have to smash it like a lot of people say. You can just gently click it and you'll get extra credit. I'm really geeked on today's guest. He's a friend of mine, but more than that, he's a skateboarder with the facial hair of a Spanish bullfighter. He's a martial artist, comedian, producer, cool guy, reformed family man. Please join me in welcoming Cory Riojas to the program. How you doing, Cory?
I'm doing well, Matt. Thanks for having me out, dude.
Well, of course. And I learned through our research that both you and I were born in Oceanside. What hospital were you? Was it Tri-City?
Oh, yeah. Tri-City. Only the best healthcare.
So I think you're the first guest I've had that was also born in Tri-City. So I knew we had an early connection, but so what were you like as a kid? I know you were into drama, but can you take us back a few years, Cory? What was your upbringing like?
Yeah. So Oceanside obviously is like, it was lower income. It was one of the last places in the area you could like have a low income life until like gentrification really set in, And so really just like bombing down hills on skateboards. One of the mottos that one of my youngest best friends, this guy Jordan, had always said was charge it.
Charge. Oh yeah.
So when I was younger, that was all we were doing, is finding hills to skate, stair sets to throw ourselves down. I found pretty young that I was not cut out for surfing. I was just like, anytime I get in the water, my luck changes like tenfold in the bad direction. So I decided I'd rather take one slam on the ground as a skateboarder and then get up, or rather than get washing machined by Mother Nature for like who knows how long.
That's interesting. Yeah, because growing up in North San Diego County, you need to at least own a skateboard. You have to have a carne asada burrito or taco at least twice a week, I think.
It's
Go ahead.
It's medicinal.
It is medicinal. But yeah, skateboard, I mean, like, I wouldn't consider myself a skateboarder, but I had one and I'd ride it to friends' houses. And it's weird because when you're like, I guess, under 15, you can just get slammed. And, it wasn't until later I actually broke something on a skateboard. But as a kid, I'd eat it all the time and you just kind of get up. But so you were into skateboarding and also theater, right? What kind of stoked that passion?
So that was middle school. I found it was the year before you go into middle school, you transition from elementary to middle. They had like the middle schoolers perform for us, like as a theater thing, And I had seen these kids going back and forth with all this like dramatic flair and all this different stuff. And like, it was just really interesting. Like, the Romeo and Juliet and like, all that stuff. I was like, whoa, like, what am I even watching here? And I was like, I can do that as like an hour or 2 hours of my school day. Hell yeah. Like I'd rather do that than, as some advanced AP or like, whatever. So I'm like, yeah, let's do that. And I started just messing around on stage. I fell in love with it. I had a really good teacher. Her name was Mrs. Stapleton. Really ignited kind of like, I guess like a more of a respect for the older art form, Shakespeare and all that stuff. And then from there, I just started reading and, from there I was hooked,
Well, thank you, Mrs. Stapleton. So it sounds like your first foray into performance was more on the drama side. Is that true?
Yeah. I love doing dramatic theater, monologues and stuff in school, trying to see if you can make somebody cry,
So how did that work? From being like this badass skater kid to kind of essentially becoming a drama geek, like what sort of social conflicts did that cause, if any?
Oh, I would say that the term badass skater kid is a stretch. I mean, I've certainly settled into myself in these later years. No, I was very awkward as a child. Very awkward.
What's that like? Please.
Oh, you would never understand, Matt. You would never.
Clearly not.
Awkward as a child. So I don't want to waste your audience time, but essentially, I had like T-Rex arms until I hit puberty. I was a very awkward, like funky, frumpy kid. And so when I first started doing theater, I was still that frumpy ass kid. And I didn't kind of come into my own physically until I think like 15 years old. But yeah, so what it was is like I still skate, I still hang out with all the, my hoodlum friends and stuff like that. But then, for I don't know, a couple months out of the year, I'm out there doing Music Man Junior rehearsals. You know what I mean? It's like goofy stuff, being weird, like trying not to get into too much trouble up in the dressing rooms. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So, what are some of the tips that you can share with maybe young theatrical types to help, improve your performance, memorize lines, whatever you suggest?
Procrastinate and cram as hard as you can, because then that there's something on the line.
You need that urgency. Yes.
Yeah, I remember it was like some Ivanov. I had a monologue in Ivanov that I was working on, Anton Chekhov, I believe, and yeah, I could not focus. I was still in high school. I was really I was just focused on girls and being dumb and skateboarding and stuff like that. And so I didn't practice. And then I'm like, that's tomorrow. and so I ended up, that's why I say I ended up making a girl cry, because I pulled it. I pulled it off. It was all about like right before the character loses his mind and runs off, pretty much kills himself. Like,
time out, Cory. How'd you make this girl cry?
Basically it's a monologue about this guy's fall into despair, and like how his I believe his brother or his uncle gets him to like build a dam and screw a bunch of people over, and then the whole city hates him, and like his wife's gonna die, and like it's just this really sad scene. And that's why I picked that monologue for the assignment. And I was like, if I send this one, dude, it's gonna land, and I got lucky that I stayed up all night and had started drinking coffee at 15.
So an early caffeine habit helped enhance your kind of brooding teen angst, and it hit the heartstrings of a young lady. So congratulations.
All right. Thank you.
At least enough to make her cry happy tears. So you went from skateboarding to theater, and talk to us about martial arts and what got you into that.
Oh, definitely. Well, what got me into it was ever since I was a child, I was fascinated by ninjas. So, I mean, that's if you really want to think about origin story. And then I found that one of my uncles is actually certified, or however you want to put it, to train ninjutsu out of Japan. Like he studied Aikido for years, went out and did a bunch of different arts, then went to Japan to actually train with the masters and be able to teach it. So my grandmother does Qigong and Tai Chi now in her old age.
Wow.
She did Aikido and a few different arts throughout her youth. All my grandma, so this is my dad's side, is from outside of Detroit, like all in the rough area. And, they were there in like the 60s and 70s and 80s as it was building up and stuff. So, you just needed to be able to handle yourself, in a fight. And so all my elders in my family trained. And then I got into it through Muay Thai, a movie called Ong Bak, the Thai Warrior. I don't know, some of your viewers might have seen it, but this dude for like 2 hours just knees and elbows everybody, Yeah, at a time where it was Jet Li or Jackie Chan doing these flashy spinny kicks. And I was like, wow, like I never really seen it done differently, or like seen it from this region of the earth, And so I got into Muay Thai, found an instructor, trained in a really defensive tactical style for over 10 years.
Wow.
And it's really, really a great way to not just like strengthen yourself and learn something practical, but also to kind of get intimate with your mind, or how you think, or where your stress points are, Because I found out that more than getting punched, more than getting cut or anything like that, I found I hate rubbing, friction rubbing. It makes me mad. Like if somebody's doing jujitsu and we have like gis on or uniforms or something, hey, it choked me out. I don't care, twist my arm, whatever. Oh, if you win, you win. But if the freaking gi rubs on like a soft neck, I'm just like, why?
So Cory Riojas, admitted friction phobe. Who knew?
Yeah. You wouldn't think from my youth.
No, no. Well, so I appreciate that you didn't just, study martial arts for a few months. Like my youngest son is into karate right now, and I'm looking for tips from you, Cory. Like, what was it that kept you in it for all those years? Like, why didn't you quit? After the initial kind of euphoria wore off.
Uh, a couple reasons I would say. One, um, I was just fascinated, by the idea of like controlling power and using it in that way. But two, it was definitely because it was my friends. We all started together. I never trained prior to, I think, when I was 15 or 16 years old. And then we found this martial arts instructor that was teaching adults, like only down in the cul-de-sac. And we used to box and do Muay Thai in our garage just together with no instruction, just watching Ung Bak and hitting each other over and over again. and and so we did that for a while, found this guy, and he said he was teaching Wing Chun to like a really technical hand, like striking style, to all the adults in this house, like a private, semi-private kind of thing. He said, no, I don't teach minors. You're all under 18. And one of our buddies kept going back week after week, because his grandparents lived right next to the house, and kept soliciting. And he's like, okay, you're clearly not going to leave me alone. I don't teach minors, but my disciple does, my student, and that ended up being my instructor, my master, Greg DeStefano.
So you were taught by a disciple. That's very cool.
Oh yeah, the dude that taught me, he has like now 30 years experience, multiple like time world champ, in all the different amateur divisions of sparring.
Mm-hmm.
And his style is one of the people that were called in to do like supplemental hand skills for special forces right down in Coronado. So
Wow.
he's a really technical dude. I was very lucky to study under him.
Yeah, no, it sounds like you have a very technical background in it. And for listeners out there who aren't as kind of in the weeds when it comes to martial arts, what are some of the biggest misconceptions that people have about martial arts?
Oh man, I would think that you can tell who's going to win a fight by looking at them. That's probably the biggest one. You cannot, for sure not. There's very small dudes that either are amazing defensively, there's no target to hit, and they'll just keep whopping people. There's big dudes that you think are just going to clobber somebody, and they're like super delicate, just laying people on the ground. It really depends. Like, because it's all a knowledge base, it's all a foundation from the brain first. Like
Mm-hmm.
you attack somebody, they're going to respond however they're prepared to respond. And sometimes the loudest mouth has no skill, and they just end up getting punched, deservedly so often. And then other times the person who is super quiet and just not doing anything ends up just being a total monster if you get on the mat.
Internal rage just bursts when
Yeah, no.
conflict strikes.
Okay, so one time I taught for several years, and one time I actually had a student who was pretty heavily autistic, and struggling with eye contact and all this and that. But I swear he had a photographic memory. It was amazing. I had to work with him. I had to progressively each lesson build like an obstacle course with a different activity or a technique that he would do at a turning point, right? And that's how we kind of build lesson to lesson. And then finally, we do like it's a 6-part little circle of different like equipment. He's kind of almost parkouring around, trying to just get some
Mm-hmm.
fun. And then at the end, I had like a wooden sword that I just had that day. And I'm like, okay, now we're going to finish with something fun. Okay. And so I was like, okay, I did like an 8-figure cut slash sort of thing, like a pretty technical, different thing I'd learned. The dude repeated it. It's like a 5 or 6-year-old kid with a full-size sword that I had. Every single stroke was photographic, on point, like the angle of like
Wow.
where it was going. And I think it's because his brain worked differently. And even though he looks essentially like a victim because of his
Mm-hmm.
posture and his, like not wanting to show his eyes and stuff like that, I was teaching that kid like vicious stuff. It was crazy. And he's a really sweet kid, but he didn't stick with it just because the social aspect was really challenging for him.
Yeah, no, I could see that would be tough. But what lessons did you learn from martial arts that you were able to take, off the mat, so to speak?
Mm, okay. A lot of mindset and awareness training for sure. Being aware of others in a public setting, or being aware of hazards and dangers that are up ahead and how to avoid and navigate them, is definitely the best for me now. Being in my 30s with a family, and we travel when we can, and going into new areas. Just having that perception, eyes and ears, head on a swivel kind of stuff. Um, but then also being comfortable in adversity, right? Being comfortable in a situation where things suck. Because I've a breakthrough for me was knuckle push-ups. We trained on asphalt in a cul-de-sac just out on the street for years. And like after like 2 years, our instructor brought a mat. so, so he had us do.
You've earned a mat.
Yeah, we were doing knuckle push-ups on the asphalt with all the craggles and different shapes, and it hurt, right? And he was like, "This is the point where you just go." Right, and you just get through it, and then I started, like, I actually did it. I full on cried straight up.
Yeah.
15 years got broken to the point where I cried. But after that, through that hardship, when I'm in a situation where things suck, somebody sucks, a situation sucks, I'm not as rattled.
Mm-hmm.
So pressure, being in a pressure cooker situation, that's the main benefit. Because when have I actually had to defend my life or protect somebody with my martial arts? Honestly, just 2 times I can think of. You know what I mean? And they were very minor. And in both situations, I don't know, it was boom,
Mm-hmm.
everything. Once I got sucker punched, and another time I got somebody tried to choke me, and
Where was this choking? Like, where were you when this happened?
I didn't realize we'd end up on this topic. Okay. So this was actually at a gay bar in Arizona. All right. So there was a block party, and I had some friends in a condo community I lived in.
Mm-hmm.
This dude Taz and me went to these block parties. There's like one at a place called Gilligan's, and a main one on Fifth Avenue. And I couldn't find him because I was bouncing back and forth between these two ticketed events, And he's like, I'm in the alleyway. I'm like, there is no alleyway on Fifth. And he's like, no, I'm at BS West. There's a third block party at the gay bar. And I'm like, what? And so I go see him.
That was bondage and submission, Cory. I think you were just, he was just hitting on you, I think. But go ahead.
No, it was, I've been there before. I don't care, And but this dude who was wasted, who was friends with this guy Taz, was being weird to me. He's like, Taz was like, be nice to him. He's straight, whatever,
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, cool, And then he was like getting weird, like touching me and stuff like that. And then he finally whispered in my ear, he's like, you just don't know how good it would be if you'd like it. And then I'm like, you need to back the fuck off.
Yeah.
And I just totally stood up for myself in that situation because he crossed the line. And then he just went for a choke like that. I circled his arm, got behind him, had him in a choke. And it was just, he was a big dude. I'm talking like Crunch Fitness gay. Like, he's big, he was a big dude.
Abs of steel, dude. Yeah.
But he was, healthy. And so I needed that, that wherewithal in the situation of adversity to not punch this dude, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because 1, he's drunk. 2, I'm in their turf. And
Right.
3, I'm pretty secure in myself, so I'm not going to get weirded out by the fact that somebody's, thinking I'm mad twink, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And so, I ended up moving around and basically exchanging the position rather than punching him. And that was, that's what you want in martial arts, rather than.
I mean, that's classic de-escalation. Like, if you smashed a beer bottle in his face, it would have been a whole different. You could have been in jail. You could have been convicted of a hate crime. For all it could have gotten really weird. But you took it and you settled it really quickly. So that's pretty awesome.
Yeah. And then the other time was just basically I got sucker punched right before this big street brawl started in Oceanside down by the cemetery. There's an old cemetery on Coast Highway right before Oceanside Boulevard. And this guy from New York came out to do whatever he was doing. And he started having house parties to meet the area. And I'm like, that's not a great idea. You don't just have open house parties in the area, dude. So a lot of the hood showed up, a lot of riffraff showed up, and then they were trying to kick him out. And I see 2 people kind of getting into it, verbally by the door. I'm like, I even think I recognize one of these dudes. So I went down and talked to like the Cholo dude. And I'm like, look, it's St. Patrick's Day. Your homies just went. You know, there's 13 parties within like 10 blocks. Like, kick rocks, you know?
Yeah.
And as soon as I said that, just crack in the back of my head. And that's actually a situation where I don't know if it was martial arts, but I really think there might be guardian angels or something like that. Because I didn't see stars or anything like that. I heard my name called up the flight of stairs that like are right at the beginning of this property. And so I got cracked and I went up the stairs to where I thought I had seen something or heard somebody call my name. And then I turn around after it, like all these dudes flood down the stairs and there's nobody there. Like there's absolutely nobody there. And so I'm like, what just happened? And I cut through the party out to the back driveway and I see the host of the party throwing up blood. He had been stabbed 15 times. Yeah, he'd stabbed 15 times right after I got sucker punched. It was like I got rocked. All the people came down the stairs, 15 on 15 brawl between all the hood we just kicked out and the people at the party. And the only person who got anything real damage was the host of the party. The nice guy who was trying to have an open house party got shanked 15 times. You know?
Oh my God.
Yeah. So it was only because I'm not hot-headed and I didn't turn around trying to, feel like it could have been me,
Wow. So you dodged a knifing potentially. So, wow. Well, you and I connected through stand-up. And I know our listeners want to know what motivated you to grab a mic and slang jokes.
Oh, man, I love it because I've loved stand-up since I was a kid. I remember in high school, like when everybody started throwing parties and like hanging out and like having girls come over to their parents' house when they're out of town and stuff. I was the guy that everybody wanted to have over, not because I was great with the girls, but because I was great on the phone. Okay, I was great on the phone.
You can get the girl's hair.
And so my friends would always ask me to come out, but I would never go out on Friday. And I would always lie and say I had cooler plans at another party, but I was really staying home to watch 4-hour blocks of stand-up comedy because that's all I didn't care about girls or booze or anything. I just wanted to sit there, just look and listen and just be like in complete reverence for these people making me so happy, and I've always loved stand-up.
You're like, the titties can wait. I want to watch Comedy Central for 4 hours.
Totally. Come on, premium blend,
Oh yeah, no, I'm right there with you. What I guess who are some of your early favorites, Cory?
Ooh. Honestly, Tommy Davidson. Underrated.
Oh, he's a beast. He's a very underrated. Yeah.
Tommy Davidson was a big one for me. George Carlin was a big one for me. Richard Pryor. And it's all like the people where I know I shouldn't be listening. I know I shouldn't be listening to
the
this.
Forbidden fruit aspect, especially like Pryor. Yeah.
Yeah, but that was just the cultures. Like he was such a phenomenal, like known part, and I'd seen him in movies and stuff, like syndicated stuff on TV and whatnot. So yeah, those are like the original ones. And then Mitch Hedberg was a really big one. When I first came out doing stand-up, I was dry, deadpan, and all I wanted to do was do some Hedberg-esque kind of like, and then also real talk though, Stephen Wright.
Oh God, yeah. Yes.
I almost see him at the Globe Theater right before the pandemic, but then pandemic started and they stopped the show. That was a disappointment.
I gotta give my dad a lot of credit. I think I was maybe 11. It was a long time ago, but one of the Indian casinos he was playing at. And I remember being a little kid going there, and he did an hour plus of just one-liners, and like there's no filler. He would just like boom, 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 boom for 1 hour, and I was like, this guy's on another level. But for people out there who are unfamiliar with Stephen Wright, please do yourself the favor, Google him, check him out, support him any way you can.
100%. Stephen Wright just like I'm not even going to waste my breath on it. Just go. Stephen Wright. Go see him anywhere you can, YouTube or whatever. Send him money directly.
Send him. So you're ditching high school parties. You're watching Tommy Davidson, Pryor, Stephen Wright. Then when was it that you decided, all right, I'm going to give this a shot?
2014. So yeah, I'll be coming up. This is like 9 years now or whatever.
Oh,
But yeah, 2014 was when I moved home. So I'm from Oceanside, Carlsbad originally, but I lived out in Arizona in Tempe and Scottsdale for about 4 years. I just needed more prospects for a job. So I went out there and I was in hospitality. I got into hospitality management pretty quickly. Things were going well. And I was at a point where I could have afforded to buy a house in Arizona and just set down roots and have it pretty good, pretty
yeah.
damn.
Arizona's a nice place.
But that was just after everybody was talking about, like, I guess I got into the money situation in 2012 where I was doing well, and that's right when everybody was saying the world's gonna end.
Oh,
End
yeah.
of time to reassess your priorities, you know? And I thought I would rather die on the beach in Oceanside or Carlsbad than I would set down live the rest of my life in the valley of Phoenix, you know? Sorry everybody who listens from out there, but it's brutal. Oh my god, it's like a blow dryer in the summer coming off the ground. And I had to like these nosebleeds. I mean, they're all just gonna be like pussy, but the point is it's not meant for me, you know. It's not, that's not where like where I belong, you know. And so I came home and I was like, what have I like been putting off? What have I not done? What's something I've wanted to do? And I used to walk by a place called the Comedy Spot right on, I believe it's Fifth and Scottsdale. And I never went in, and I worked directly across the street from it for like 4 years. And I'd always say like, I want to go in there. I want to do the open mic. I think about doing the open mic. And then finally I moved home in 2014. And now instead of it being right across the street from my work, the closest place with an open mic is like 45 minutes south in downtown San Diego, you know, at the Mat. And I'm like, well, it just got farther because I waited. If I wait any
Right.
longer, where's the only one going to be, you
So
know?
me in
And
Tijuana. Yeah. If you waited one more year, it'd be in TJ.
yeah, so I said, screw it. And I started at ACC was my first one back when Jimmy Calloway used to host the open mic. And that was a fantastic open mic back then. I haven't been since. But Madhouse also was like a regular spot. I used to love when you could do the, I think it was either Wednesdays or Tuesdays, but you used to be able to go ACC and then immediately run upstairs in the mall to go to the old Madhouse location. So you do 3 minutes at ACC and then 5 minutes at Madhouse, and one night right next to each other without driving in between. It was beautiful.
That's really nice. And then, how has your comedy progressed since then? I mean, you're probably trying to be someone else, but now you're different. So please share with our audience the changes.
Okay, yeah. Like I was saying before, I was fascinated with Stephen Wright and Mitch Hedberg, and I was dry and deadpan, and just clever, witty ideas, taking things and turning them on their head, but short, you know. And then as my life progressed, and I got married and had a kid and things, I just realized that the ideas were bigger, and that when you talk about life, you're really storytelling.
Mm-hmm.
And so I started storytelling more often, and just finding myself in that space where I don't feel as though I have to go like, didn't, right, every time. It doesn't have to be that fast. And it's, I read some books throughout the years. Like there's one that I really stand by because it's more exercises to like work your brain and kind of your thinking muscle, but it's just called How to Be a Great Stand-Up. And I just, for years, I'd be in coffee shops finding these different exercises, writing these different ways to like take idioms or quips and like flip them and turn them around and stuff and flexing that muscle. And now I find that just when I talk about life on stage, I was at the Comedy Store last night. I got very fortunate. Jimmy Shin, awesome guy, he runs a Shindig show there on Wednesday, this last Wednesday. And I had a great time. But the first like half of my set is mostly new material that like I've worked through maybe 2 times, 3 times. And that's all it takes now. That's the biggest thing that's changed. Is before it used to be I'd baby this thing and I would dissect it and I would tear it apart and then I would throw it away for 3 months because I don't think I did it right, you know? And now I just kind of accept that every audience is different. And every time I tell a story, it might be a little bit different. And as long as it's getting better along the way, it's got legs and it's something that I should share, you know?
Yeah, I think you probably trust your material more than you did when you started. And you also know when to keep it and you know when to quit it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, one thing I admire about you, Cory, is that you're very good at kind of creating your own path. Comedy is very entrepreneurial. It's not for the timid. Um, you started your own brand. Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, definitely. I started Everloving comedy like 5 years ago. It was after my son was born. Basically, I was worried I was gonna have to quit. You know, I had this new commitment that I'm very focused on. So my son being the most important thing, I had to find a way to make it worth it. So I'm not just going out and practicing and getting nothing from it. I had just started getting booked at that point, you know, the usual here's a beer for your time, sir kind of
Right.
booking. Um, and then I reached out to actually a funny comedian from our area, Zoltan Kazas.
Oh, very good comment. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and he was super cool. At that point, you know, I don't think he was quite as busy as he is now. This was years ago, and I just said, "Hey, dude, you know, I'm doing this. I'm at this level. I was hoping I could maybe just buy you coffee and I could ask you some questions." And he was like, "Dude, for sure, just come to my area so I don't have to drive." And I was like, "Sweet." And I told him my situation. I told him I was worried I was going to have to quit, but I had just started getting booked and I don't want to quit. And he had said, "Have you thought about bringing comedy to you?" I'm like, "What do you mean?" And he's like, "Run your own show." And I'm like, "You can do that?" Like,
You don't need a special permit or
yeah. And he's like,
license.
"Dude, you need this, this, and this, and you are going to have to get out there and sell yourself." And I was like, "Dude, like, he gave me a bunch of other very useful options I could have worked on too. But that was the one that made sense for me because, like you were saying, I think businessy, I think entrepreneurial, right? And I was like, if I can bring money into the household through doing comedy, now comedy has a place in my life and with my family and stuff. And so I started producing shows. And at that point, I wasn't making any money. I was
Yeah.
not. You know, basically asking for them to pay for the comedians and have me run a free show. But it, you know, I convinced my wife it was going somewhere. You know, I was like, let's go, it's gonna happen. And then finally, when COVID had started, we had realized that we had to limit our capacity due to the restructuring of how you can sit. We also were outside for our show, so that saved us. Since we we're outside and we already had a capacity that was within what the county or whatever was saying at the time, we just said limited seating, ticket price, you know. And so we started charging for shows at that point, and then all of a sudden it became a business. And now I have a show in Temecula at a brewing company once monthly. I have a show that's Temecula Brewing Company. That's the second Saturday of every month in Temecula. It's like in a cool spot too. Oceanside Brewing Company is the third Saturday of every month. That's in Oceanside, right in the industrial area, not far from like the main drag. And then I have one right off Coast Highway, a little tiny shoebox. You've been there before, of a room called Jazzy Wishbone. And that one is like
Cool
a work.
place. Yeah.
Yeah. It's been really fun. We've been fortunate to have people like yourself and other people come through. You know, it is what it is. You're right there. But I feel like that's the teeth cutter, you know, get them out there. Like if someone can handle 15 at the Jazzy, I can trust them at any one of my other, you know.
I mean, that brings up a good point, Cory. How has producing shows impacted your own stand-up?
I've learned so much from asking questions to all the headliners that I've worked with. Shout out to Heather Marie, who runs the Privateer.
Absolutely. We love you, Heather. Yeah.
But so she gave me a summer residency to host the Privateer show. This was like right around when I just started doing my own shows. And from there, I had met so many headliners I would have never met otherwise.
In fact, I think that's where we met, but go ahead.
It is, yeah. And so I met cool people. They got to see that I was on the level, you know, and then I would ask them questions. I'd be like, "Hey, man, like, how did you do that?" Like, you know, and I was like, "You had them, like Jerry Maguire, like you had them at Hello," you know what I mean? Like, and one dude just dropped some knowledge on me about more of the mentalist aspect, you know, like commonality and like even keel and like likability and stuff like that. And so the more esoteric aspects of comedy, not setup or premise, setup, punchline,
Yeah.
but it was more like, here's truths, and all you have to do is incorporate that into your stand-up. And I started doing it, and it was proof in the pudding. Here's an example. I went out to a very fun show in Hemet called the Derby's Comedy Night. And one year I was crushing all throughout the different spots that I was doing in San Diego with what I was working with at the time. Go out to Hemet, bomb, bomb. It was so bad. It was so bad. I ate my nuts in front of a group of, 50 to 60. The youngest person in the audience that night was like 50. And I'm like, they're going to love the race stuff, you know? And it was so bad that one of the old guys, like one of the gray haired types, walked up when I was at the bar, like licking my wounds. And he put his hand on my shoulder. He's like, I thought you're funny. And I was like, oh.
You're the one. Thank you.
Yeah. But then I learned from that headliner and several others through that summer residency what was up, right? I came back a year later. I had maybe 30 to 40% new material, but I kept on purpose a lot of the stuff that bombed that other time because I had kept it in my act everywhere else that I had played, And I said, it's a new day. It's the same jokes. It's a new audience, And so I basically commonality up front, a little bit of crowd work, got them on my side, and then I went into it. And because I learned those things in the year from the first time and the second time, I went from bombing to virtually the same material, absolutely riding high at the end of my set. I was so happy with the way that it went,
That's a good lesson. Yeah, I mean, you don't have to abandon something because of one bad set. You can just retweak it and rework things, and then you can crush. So
yeah, and they don't test people for a sense of humor before they let them into a comedy show. No.
Well, and that's another. I think as people do it more, like I remember when I first started, I kind of live or die with each set. If it was bad, it was like, oh, it would hurt for days or weeks. If it was good, I'd feel like euphoric. And you kind of learn it's to not let that change you so much because you're going to be, I mean, I see why mental health is such a problem in comedy. It can really kill you if you give the audience that much power.
Yeah. And not to mention just like when, so I think that all comedians, except for a few, and I'm talking about, are relatively self-judgmental, except for the big-headed types, and when we go up on stage, if we already haven't sorted that out, the crowd is just going to reflect back our own self-judgment. It's not really them, it's us, and then our dissatisfaction with whether or not we feel like we pleased them.
Yes.
Like for me, like I meditate and I pray before I go up on stage, and I just ask that I joy to people. That's
sorry, that you're what to people?
Oh, I can't hear you. Mic drop.
So you asked that you're what to people?
Oh, sorry, my Bluetooth, I picked up something. Okay. But I asked that I bring joy to people. I asked for my words to be guided to bring joy, just because I remember it was a Jim Carrey interview, and he had basically said he does what he does because he wants to relieve the suffering of the audience, because you never know where they came from, what their life is like, how much they need or deserve or want a laugh, Mm-hmm. And so I just let all judgment aside, and I just focus on bringing levity into the room, like being a conduit for levity, and that's really like my goal.
I like that, because I think lots of comics try to preach or teach or kind of espouse a philosophy, and maybe there's some underpinnings of that, but if you focus on the audience and bringing joy, then I think it's a much more kind of symbiotic. It's much more fun for both sides. Well, I could talk to you for hours, but I'm curious, what have you done, I guess, professionally or personally, you can answer it either way, that you're most proud of?
Dang. Personally, I would say the relationship I have with my family. It was not easy. I certainly am not. I am no longer the person that I once was. And so I've had to, mend a lot of fences and, learn a lot about what life is compared to what it was sold as when we were kids. You know what I mean? Like, the idea that you can just work a job and it's all going to work out. And when you find your partner, you're all going to fucking sing Kumbaya. It's like, I'm most proud, if I could say proud, I would just say pleased with, in my opinion. I'm most pleased with the relationship I have with, my family, because that's really where my heart is. And that's just something that I feel like is, it's not valued enough. I think the family unit is undervalued right now. It's an undervalued stock, I think. And a lot of people feel that way because of the fact that it was undervalued for them, And so if you never had a good family, or you've never really seen what that's like, or you've had that taken away from you, there can be a bitterness when it comes to the family unit. But the fact is that some people have families they're born into, some people have families that they choose and create, and it doesn't matter what your family looks like or the structure of it. If there's a loving commitment to each other, that's something that, you just don't get in other realms.
If I could wish one thing on, I guess, any child born or just any person, it would be some sort of loving structure,
Right.
Ideally a family structure, because it's like, longevity, health, job security, overall contentment. I mean, I don't have the stats in front of me, but I think if you have a loving, strong family, you're going to be head and shoulders above those that don't.
Well, it's the effects, man. There's so many things in our lives that we commit to for a moment, Yeah. And so like even my dad, he's gone now, but I got this information from him vicariously through my uncle, right, his brother. I was talking about the challenges of marriage and worry about, like, are we going to make it? Am I going to end up with a divorce or whatever? And, to comfort me, because he knew that I was really like stressed. He's like, look, your dad used to always tell me this about problems, about things in life, about commitments. Things are permanent until you decide that they're not anymore. So you decide what's permanent in your life and you decide what isn't, and then I took a lot of solace in that and comfort in that, and the idea that any circumstance that comes my way, I at least have some part to play in allowing it.
Wow, that's really, yeah. Wise advice from your dad, carried out through your uncle. What are you most optimistic about, Cory?
Dang, I guess worldwide or just personally, worldwide.
However you want to answer. Yeah, I mean, sometimes whatever comes to you first.
Yeah, I mean, I would say I'm most optimistic about the environment right now, because of the projects that are going on in the Pacific Gyres. There's a whole lot of plastic being pulled out of the ocean right now through a project that was started by a guy when he was a little kid. He came up with like a dragnet sort of operation.
Yeah, that's right. Go ahead. Yeah.
And that is one of the most badass things I've ever seen. Like, no lie. Like, I had to like control my own ego for the jealousy of his genius. I was like, oh my gosh, like that's so genius, And so like when I see people like that in the world, by the way, not getting enough press for some stuff like that. I mean, they're talking about tonnage coming out of the ocean on a regular basis, and they're launching a second wave that's going to be even more efficient, and they actually now have a calculated end date where the majority of like measurable plastics from the Pacific Gyres will be gone.
Well, where does it go? I mean, I don't want to get too deep.
That is a problem. I mean, petroleum-based plastic products are, they don't biodegrade, and so there are issues there. But it would go into landfill recycling and what have you. But the point is that, it's better for us to manage our waste on land and put ourselves in a situation to actually have to deal with that trash and that problem and our own environmental mix-ups over the years than it is to destroy like coral reefs and ecosystems and all that stuff. I mean, these gyres were so big at a point. There was a guy living on the gyre. He had strapped so much garbage together that he had an island.
Oh yeah, the Garbage Island documentary.
Yeah.
I think. Yeah.
So wow. that's getting cleaned up right now, and it's a slow process, but that's a reality of the world that the mainstream news isn't really cared to talk about, because people, it's a flash in the pan. They're like, oh, isn't that exciting? Now let me go back to like consumerism, you know. Mm-hmm. And so to put more plastic in the ocean, you know. So there's my pessimism coming out. But optimistically, I think the environment and the strides that we're making technologically to address those issues, I think, is something I'm really optimistic about, because of I just have a need to push against those doom and gloom people, you know.
Yeah, Apocalypse Never. That's a book that I want to read sometime. But just for the title alone, I love that. Where can people learn more about you, your shows, what you're up to?
Oh yeah, follow me on Everloving Comedy on Facebook or Instagram. If you want to, sorry, somebody's trying to call in and I'm not taking it. Okay. Follow me on Everloving Comedy on Facebook or Instagram. If you want to see my comedy sets, CoryRiojas.com, CoryRiojas.com. I have a calendar on there. You can see all my dates for my productions and just the shows that I'm doing. And then, yeah, follow me personally, the Stand-Up Loner on Instagram.
Do all of those things. Cory Riojas, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, Matt, thanks for having me, man. Great talking.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Matt Balaker podcast. To learn more, please check out mattbalaker.com and encourage your friends to like, subscribe, and share. Really appreciate it.